Welcome back to Rise to Liberty podcast. Tonight I am joined by Jeremy Baker, who is actually running for the House of Representatives here in Utah in District 51, correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
So, Jeremy, tell us about yourself, where you grew up, what got you into libertarianism versus the other legacy parties.
Sure. So I'm a Utah native, I guess. I've grown up in Utah my entire life. I moved around a lot, but I graduated from high school at Timpanogos High School in Orem. I went on to school at USU, studied computer science, and then transferred near the end and went to UVU and finished my bachelor's with a degree in criminal justice, and then went on further to UVU and finished my master's of science in cybersecurity at UVU. So I'm a lot of I guess I've been through a lot of stuff in Utah. I've been around some of the colleges, and when I first got introduced into libertarianism was actually when I was studying criminal justice. So while I was at UVU, there were a couple of ethics classes that all the criminal justice students had to take, and one of them introduced me to Ayn Rand, and I learned about Atlas Shrugged and started reading into a lot of that. And then I had another ethics class specifically about the ethics of laws. And um, in that class, we discussed more or less like what kind of laws are just and if they should be laws. And I realized at that point that there's a lot of stuff that is put into law that I don't think should ever be put into law. And at the same time, Gary Johnson was running for president in 2012. I heard a little bit about him, and then um, 2016 rolled around, and he was running again. And that was about when I decided that I would change my party affiliation. And I didn't start diving into politics too much until 2000 2018, I would say, and 2019. 2018 was my first interaction with the local libertarians in Utah, and I went and my first meetup with them was the Lincoln Chafee dinner, and so I got to meet Lincoln Chafee and a few others at Joe Bookman's house, and um, decided to stay around a little bit. And at the end of I guess 2019, I guess near the end of it, I was intrigued by Tulsi Gabbard, and so I volunteered with their social media team and did some things with that organization and helped a little bit where I could, and then did a lot on Facebook. And at the end of that, when she decided to call it quits, I looked at the libertarians to see like what we were doing, and I saw that Joe Jorgensen was running, and I liked her rhetoric and a lot of stuff before, and I was happy that she got selected as the presidential candidate, and decided to um, see where I could. And the chair here reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to run or if I wanted to run her state um, efforts as the state director for her campaign. And being new to everything, I was like, oh, what the heck? I'll do that. And it was a lot of work, but I was happy to do that. Being able to set up an event where Spike Cohen came into town, and did a speech at the Capitol and met with everybody here, and then doing all the social media for George Jorgensen's campaign, and getting out all the emails, and and everything that the campaign was forwarding and distributing all the materials. That was a fun experience, and I brought over to the campaign some of the stuff that I learned from Tulsi Gabbard's campaign, because there were definitely things from Tulsi Gabbard's campaign that I would say were very organized and very well done. And I think it helped a little bit, at least on the libertarian side. The one thing I did learn about that is uh, notoriously, I guess, libertarians are pretty bad at passing on info from one campaign to another, and so a lot of it was rushed, and it was a good learning experience. But knowing what's going on, one of the big things that I noted from it was a big push that I thought would be to standardize a little bit more and get more experience with our candidates and such. And that led to now where I decided that I wanted to experience everything that I needed to do to run at a state level. And so I put myself in the ring and decided to jump in and get my feet wet and see what exactly it's needed to do to run as a state office or state legislative office.
So I'm actually running for state office as well, and I don't know about you, but I see why people don't run for office. Um, I see why people don't want to, and I see how easy it is for the people who do run for office to just stay in that position.
Yeah.
Um, it's been interesting. Um, One thing I want to ask, not really planned on, but what do you think the, I guess, libertarian fascination is with Tulsi? I
Um,
don't dislike her, but I'm not a big fan. I'm
so
big
I would say
fence.
it's the same thing. Like I've been watching a little bit of the posts that Reed Coverdale has put out, and he's noted that even he helped with her campaign and stuff. And the same with me, and it was cool to meet him after he came out to Utah, because me and him had collaborated here or there digitally, um, and I think the big thing is of how big of a speaker she is on peace and foreign politics, I guess foreign policy, and how the United States should be interacting in that. Obviously, there were questionable things that she supported, like the gun control. That was not libertarian, or I guess not leaning the way libertarians typically do, and also um, her stance on the COVID pandemic, with healthcare and mandating masks and such. She was more of the traditional progressive and Democrat, but um, little things here or there. She never really talked economics on her campaign. And so I'm thinking that it could be that she is more right leaning in that regard. And it will be interesting to see what she does in the future, because um, libertarians and GOP are both really big on economics. And that is a common talking point across all campaigns. And um, now that she's not part of the Democrat Party, and she is independent, it'll be interesting to see what she does. I know some of the videos that she's done recently. It seems like maybe she's softening on her gun control stance. I'm still skeptical, so I will see. But I think a lot of the pull towards her, at least in the libertarian circles, is because she is the closest thing out there, or I guess she is the closest candidate that's ever been running to like libertarian positions. I would say like Rand Paul and Thomas Massey, obviously they're pretty close as well. And
They're
it's
bad on
always,
things too. So
yeah, they're bad on things too. But it's always good to see Rand Paul run as for a Republican, for the Republican presidency. But it's interesting to see just how little support he gets in that party, and um, seeing that makes me realize that the GOP has a lot more establishment roots that keep government in place, and so I think the big thing was, especially like talking with Lincoln Chafee when he came, he also noted Tulsi Gabbard, and I think it's because the pathway that Democrats need to take in order to become libertarian follows the same footsteps that Tulsi is in right now. And um, as I've known, like there's a joke in the libertarian world that is, if you go on the road to minarchy, you're about 6 months to a year away from anarchy. And
yeah, is that
and
right?
and so I think a lot of the libertarian principles, once they start inching their way in, people gradually move over, but it's principles that stick and then also start applying to other areas. And I think it's a gradual effort, and the Overton window, as I've seen, has shifted dramatically our way. It's crazy going online and seeing random people throw libertarian stuff out on just like random posts and stuff, and um, I think a lot of the talking points are seeping through the U.S. culture a lot stronger than our voting numbers show. So,
I agree. I believe the ideas are a lot more popular than people would like to lead on, especially when you're in certain echo chambers, such as Twitter.
mhm.
Um, Twitter is a hellhole, and it's just nothing but toxicity being thrown around. Um, and when you get on there, if it's not a good sample size, as far as I'm concerned, um, especially with the bots. I mean that just
Yeah,
it's not a
yeah, I
good
agree.
sample size, um, which is kind of interesting. So there was the LP New Hampshire tweet heard around the world.
Yeah.
That I I loved every bit of that, and the reason why is because when we have more moderate people coming in and just talking about like let's get rid of fishing licenses, you know, like let's roll back some of these let's put sunset clauses on bills that have been around forever. That sounds a lot more reasonable now that that's been unleashed
Hmm.
out of the cage. And it's like, look, we're not them, we're something else. You know, we are our own entity. Um, which was the one thing I was disappointed in a lot of the pushback. Um, Obviously, it's okay to push back against that, um, but pretending that that's not libertarian, as if that Twitter handle is not known for things exactly like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's the one thing about the Libertarian Party I wish everyone would know, outsiders that is that you know Utah doesn't tell Nebraska what to do, or vice versa,
Yeah.
and Montana doesn't tell Connecticut what to do. Like, even though we're all libertarians, we're decentralized. So whatever New Hampshire does, or any other state, Texas, California, it doesn't matter. That's them. That's it.
Yeah. That
That,
we even go further. Like I know in Utah, on the executive committee, we've been working with the county affiliates, and the biggest thing that all of us on the executive committee tell all the counties is, hey, this is your guys' thing. You go ahead and do whatever you think is right, and just let us know if you need any help from us. And we expect you to be autonomous in a way.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the whole point, right? It's a decentralized organization. And I make this argument a lot that the actual organization can only happen on the county level.
Hmm.
I mean, honestly, it happens in the home. That's the smallest that you could break it down. Um, but as the organization as it is, it happens on the county level. What national does, what state affiliates do outside of the state doesn't matter.
Yeah. And the other big thing about the county level is a lot of the local elections, especially county offices and city, and even just the state legislative offices, all of those impact people significantly more than the federal level. Um, all the things that people complain about, like zoning laws or licensing, all of those happen at a county, city, and state level. The things that people see that impede their freedom every single day, they don't come from the federal government. They come from local policies and local laws.
Yeah.
And
And
one example, like Utah, one of the things that I'm running on is Utah has the most restrictive laws for alcohol and gambling. And the Cato Institute's Freedom in the 50 States report noted that Utah ranks dead last in freedom for both of those. And
yeah.
I mean, I know Utah. You know, we have a lot of. I think last I saw, 50% of our population is LDS, and so it's understandable. But like, I'm LDS, and one of the tenets of the religion is that we let other people believe what they want, and we don't impose that on others. But somehow it translated into state law that that we should have restrictive alcohol laws because it's bad. Anyways,
Yeah. Yeah, and I've worked um, at all different levels for the state within the alcohol industry, the alcohol monopoly. Um,
mhm,
it is very interesting. I've worked at the state liquor stores. I've worked for a beer distribution company. Um, I I mean I've worked convenience stores selling beer that way, and it's it's interesting. It's not the worst system. However, I still don't like the fact that a government organization is the one that controls it all.
yeah. Well,
Um,
and like one of the biggest examples of that recently was the DABC or DABS. They got
DABS.
a liquor license that they could have given out, and instead of giving it out to another company to allow that, they held it. They didn't give it to anybody, and so they decided to restrict it more, and rather than let someone else into the club
Yeah,
that they control.
yeah. It's really interesting, which is why I try to speak up against the grocery tax and the gas
Mhm.
tax. Um, the state is pulling in just wads of cash, hand over fist, in taxes from the state-run alcohol business.
Mhm.
It is just to kind of give an idea. In one of the smaller, uh, one of the smaller state liquor stores. Granted, it was the one of the busier days of the entire year. You know, the days leading up to Thanksgiving, and there was one particular day that we had sold out of almost everything. The back stock was pretty much gone, and we had pulled in close or a little over $850,000 in just one location.
Wow.
That's just tax revenue. So, and that's one of the tiny stores, not one of the big
Wow.
ones.
Yeah.
So, yeah, when it comes to the grocery tax and the gas tax, I'm like, you guys don't need it. You
Yep.
really don't.
Yep. The grocery tax, from what I did on my research, there's only 13 states that have a grocery tax right now, and Utah is one of them. In that case, we really could get better. Like, we should be off of that 13 list and put on the 38 list instead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what are a couple of other platforms that you decided to run on?
So one of the things that I wanted to run is reducing the expenses and the kind of the books of the government. One of the things that the Cato Institute also noted in comparing us to New Hampshire is that based on population size, our government budget is a lot bigger than it should be. So if we're going to be a more free state, we need to have the government do less. And I know there's a lot of subsidization and I guess corporatism that goes on in Utah, and a lot of the Republicans favor that. I know one of the questions that Americans for Prosperity asked on their survey to me was, "Do you support stimulus for the economy?" And as a laissez-faire um, supporter of economics and also supporter of Austrian economics, like government intervention through stimulus or any of that is something I don't support and that I would be looking to get rid of. I know the Libertas Institute mentioned uh, occupational licensing. That's something that's not necessary either in the state. It's an unnecessary economic burden on people that want to do business. And one of the other running points that I'm on, since I'm in the cybersecurity world a lot, one of the big topics that comes up is digital privacy. And one of the big things that I know working in consumer electronics is that people don't know what's being tracked about them, especially with IoT devices and all the stuff. I mean, there's a joke going around that Microsoft gets caught looking at information and people are frustrated about it. And then Google's like, well, you guys tell your customers that and you do that. And then Apple's like, people know you do that. And then Linux is more or less like, you guys are tracking people. Like, what is going on? But yeah, no. One of the big things that I see, and it comes from corporatism, is right now if you have a breach or anything like that, ends up being the entity, the company goes and they either have like cybersecurity insurance, but also there are penalties in the legal system, but they're capped. And so as long as you follow like the cybersecurity guidelines from either the state or federal, it creates this cap on how much you could be sued for the damages that you've done by having a breach or anything like that. And I think one of the things that libertarians can support is instead of having a state fine and the money going to the state, is more or less creating the pipeline for tort crimes. So individuals that are harmed by a company through a breach are free to sue for damages. We saw that with Equifax. One of the things that came out from that class action suit was credit monitoring for all the people that had their data breached, but that was it. Like, there wasn't any penalty for like, um, or I guess compensation for like stress or potential or any of that that probably should have been there. And I think if leaders are going to be, or company leaders are going to be more aware of cybersecurity risks for consumers and their customers, they need to have a financial penalty in that regard where they can understand that, hey, if we don't secure our customers' info, we're potentially liable for an uncertain or a lot higher value instead of something that is shielded cap. Because if they have to go in and be like, this is a value that we can't quantify, and it could be really, really high, they're going to put more priority on making sure things are secure and they're not tracking stuff before they release it. And so I think in that regard, we would need to fix laws at a legislative level in order to make it so that businesses wouldn't have that legal shield, and that if something did happen like that, they would feel the full financial penalty. And it would also give cybersecurity insurance providers the opportunity to, uh, I guess, audit and have higher standards for what they're going to be insuring. And I think that could clean up a lot of what's going on in our digital world right now. The other thing I'm running on is ending the grocery tax and reducing a lot of the other taxes. Utah has an income tax, and I think that is something that we could phase out. And there are a few other states that don't have an income tax, and in my personal opinion, a tax on labor is one of the worst that we can have. The second one would be property tax, where you're taxed for something that you just have. Um, uh, and eventually, hopefully, we can get to a point where government is small enough that we can go out and ask for donations just for getting certain things that people really want to have done.
And personally, my where I've kind of landed on the funding of public services and goods is why not just set it up to where it's like a GoFundMe account?
Mm-hmm.
The most popular proposals are the ones that get funded, and the ones that don't.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, it's up to us um, to decide if we want to at all, or if we do, how much. It
Yeah.
seems pretty reasonable to me. Obviously, not every idea that a politician will propose is going to be a good one, or even if it is a good one, the surrounding community might not agree.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they should have every right to be able to voice that opinion with their money.
Yeah. Here's another. I saw a post on Twitter from the uh, Classical Liberal Caucus, I think, and they were noting that libertarians didn't want to get rid of the state; they just wanted to make it less coercive. And I thought about that a little bit before I responded, and I was thinking, like, what is a state that isn't coercive? And in that case, everything involved with the state would have to be voluntary. And at that point, you're pretty much just a private club. And you would be having like a membership fee or some kind of other subscription service, and people would voluntarily subscribe and join. And then they would get the benefits of whatever you have. And I think going forward, that could be some of the stuff. The hard part is a lot of, at least at the city level, a lot of the infrastructure is centralized. And um, I think uh, like vocally supporting and also working in stuff to help decentralization of like power and water and a few other things would be good. Like something that could be done at a state level would be allowing individuals to collect rainwater on their own property, despite what any other government that says. I think that's something that could be very important with especially Utah, because I mean we're a desert state and there's a lot of talk about water and such, and having a collection on your own property seems to make a lot of sense. So you can use it however you want.
At one point in time, there was a certain amount of encouragement from different governments about growing your own food,
Mhm.
being self-sustainable as possible. Not to say that things were so wonderful back then. However, that is one thing I do like one thing I don't see at all now.
Mhm.
It's more of a be dependent upon us. Um, so I feel that a rain collection system and have not only having that allowed but also encouraged
Mhm.
would be a good idea. Um, at this point, I'm not sure what the solution is for the water issues over here. Um, I don't know. I'm not opposed to a pipeline as long as it's voluntarily funded.
Yep,
You know.
I agree with that too. I
Um,
know one of the things that's going on locally that I was actually really surprised about is apparently Lehigh City doesn't have water monitoring on their secondary system. So they literally don't know who is using what. They just have one standard fee that everybody in the city pays, and then they don't track where that water goes. And they just have one system where they track that. And there's they have a bond up right now where they're going to be getting a system like that and then using the revenue off that to pay it off. And I'm contemplating on what I think about that. But in one case, it's better to be able to track what people use, but at the same time, like it's also more funding and more monitoring at the state or at the city level. So um,
yeah.
it'll be interesting to see, but like uh, it'll be interesting to see what goes on throughout the state. And I think having libertarians in office to be able to discuss that stuff would be really important because we do have a different perspective than the traditional Republican in the state, as well as the small amount of Democrats that are in office as well.
The Salt Lake Democrats.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. Like I was looking at candidates running in Utah County, and there are 6 Democrats running for state and county offices, or state legislative and county offices, and then there's 4 United Utah Party, and then there's 2 Libertarians in Utah County, and then we also have, I guess, another set of state offices is the state board, and there's a Republican and a Libertarian running there. Luckily, it sounds like the Republican running is very libertarian, and so the two are good friends, so to say, and have pretty much really close to the same ideas that they want to do at at the state level. So um,
So
I
one thing I wanted to ask is how has the public received the message of what you're running on?
um the people that I've talked to, at least the the locals, um, it's not so much the platform that I'm running on; it's more the personality. So it was really interesting seeing that with a lot of the people that I've talked to. It's more, hey, I'm running for office, and they're like, oh, I know you, I'm going to vote for you, and um, or like, oh, you're running, okay, well that's cool. And I had a guy come by because I was getting my car detailed, and at the end of it, um, I I had mentioned that I was running for office, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I saw the libertarian sticker on your other car in your driveway." And he's like, "I'm a libertarian too, and I'll vote for you." And I was like, "Oh, interesting." And so I think um, the big thing is just getting a name out there and being heard and stuff. And um, it'll be interesting to see, at least in my district, how much the digital footprint plays a role. Um, I haven't done much like event wise or flyer wise, but I think it'll be interesting to see. I had Google reach out to me, and they were like, "Hey, we want to have your info so that we can put it in our services and stuff." And So I was like, oh, okay, well, that's really interesting. I
Yeah,
didn't
really.
expect that one. And
I mean, they should already have your info.
yeah, well, they wanted like yeah, like I'm on Ballotpedia now. I filled out all that stuff, and but Google specifically reached out and was like, "Hey, we want you in our election info." And so my hope is that there's enough people in Utah County, or at least in my district, that when they go, they look at their ballot and see the name, and then do a quick Google search, and or do some other kind of search. I tried to put myself on as many of the voter guides and stuff that are coming out. One of the biggest ones I did was there's a a group that wants to do a Article 5 convention in order to put term limits on U.S. senators and U.S. House of Representatives. And when I saw it, I was like, oh, yeah, I would support that, because, I mean, at that point, you make it so that people can't go into the U.S. government and be career politicians, and you cycle it more. And at that point, everybody coming in would want to have things move smoother and change rules so that Congress would actually run a lot better. I know there's a lot of red tape there, and it sounds like, at least from what Justin Amash said, and a lot of the senior people there have created these like pipelines and rules and stuff that really shouldn't be there. And so I thought that was kind of cool. And I saw that they had like 35,000 followers and stuff on their group, and that was the biggest one that reached out to me. And then uh, I'm also in all the Facebook groups. There's community groups for Lehigh and Saratoga Springs, and so I posted my stuff up there, and a while ago. And then I also noted just recently that I invited all of them to check their ballots that are coming out soon, and to note that there's more than just one candidate running for some offices, and that I hope they did their research and choose who they do fully support. So it'll be interesting to see. Um, but I've seen receptive, I guess, interest in the Libertarian Party. I even did a interview, kind of like, I guess, a live stream with January Walker for the United Utah Party, and she invited me out, and I was like, oh, that was kind of cool. And got to talk with her, and had a good session with her, um, and ended up winning her vote. So that was kind of nice. And um, I'll likely end up voting for her as well, because she's big on crypto, and um, a lot better than the Burgess Owens and whoever the Democrat is that's running. I don't. I guess
I don't know.
it's bad that I don't know, but at the same time, I'm really not interested in
Yeah,
the Democratic Party.
I get you. Yeah, I had noticed that there was a. I'm not sure the position off the top of my head. There's so many other things to think about and worry about all the time. Um, I had actually quote tweeted something that she had said, but she is a candidate for Utah Forward Party, which I thought was interesting that they had a large enough um, presence here in Utah, of all places, to run a candidate. Good luck, just
Hmm.
like with the rest of us. But they had said something that I thought was kind of interesting about when you can access an identity wallet, then it will like change your life or something. I can't remember. I'm paraphrasing, um, but it was the idea of tying your identity to a blockchain wallet,
Hmm.
and I was like, I don't like that at all. That's terrifying. Like my birth certificate and my state ID are supposed to be on blockchain now. Mm-mm. I don't like that one bit. I love blockchain technology. I don't want my identity tied to it. That's why
Yeah,
I got out of Bitcoin.
yeah, that's interesting. The way I understood it when I was talking to January, and maybe they are explaining it differently, or maybe I thought of it of a different way, is that it would be like a so instead of like a blockchain type network where crypto handles all that stuff, it would actually just be like a personal encrypted ledger. So you would have uh, kind of like a hard wallet, like they have for, I guess, what are they called? The Nano or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of storing like your cryptocurrency, it would be storing your personal documents. Um, so if you needed access to those, then you could be like, okay, here's here's my info, and then you can go. I think it seemed a little bit, I guess, I would say in some cases it seemed a little bit unnecessary. But as it is right now, like all the medical records and um, I guess state records, IDs, and everything like that, they're already in central databases. So it doesn't, yeah, they're not all collected into one central database, but they are in their own databases. And so I think maybe in some cases there could be some document policy laws that further individual freedom and privacy that could be coming or could come from a state level. I know um, California is not like the shining example of freedom, but one of the things as a cybersecurity engineer that I ran into was their uh, CCPA. So it was their Consumer Privacy Act, and it did a lot with individuals' data and giving more privacy for that data. And I think that could be something that libertarians could champion, where there is this idea of freedom and everybody should be expecting that. I would say instead of enforcing it by state fines and state law enforcement or city law enforcement, it would be better served in the court system with, um, I would say, civil suits. So instead of taking like state action, it would be more or less like Texas's abortion law, but towards consumer privacy. So if a company doesn't use your or secure your data, you're free to sue them because they're being negligent.
Yeah. And I mean, if I do like the idea of being able to centralize all my information to where I can control it
Hmm.
and, cold storage, take it off the chain. I like that idea. Um, because the way I had it explained to me when I first started getting into cryptocurrency and just the crypto community in general was either we take control of the technology or somebody else that we don't want to control the technology will.
Hmm.
Which is why I'm 110% behind Monero. Things like Pirate Chain, all privacy based, open source, non custodial wallets, that sort of thing. Because it could be the ultimate change moving forward in humanity as long as we have the ability to control that for us. But if that backfires, the horrific side of what could happen is worse than anything we've ever seen. It,
Yep.
it it's a Stalin wet dream.
Yep.
You
Yep.
know,
Exactly. Knowing where every penny goes in some kind of central digital currency.
yeah,
There's a lot there. Right now, I guess part of my undergrad, criminal justice, I studied money laundering and a lot of the different techniques that the banks use through the CFCS or ACFCS certification, and a lot of it revolved around moving money outside of the banking system and then moving it back in. And if the entire monetary system is digital, there's no room for doing that. And so, yeah, it would be like a huge privacy issue with um, the whole financial system. And there were a couple articles and people that I talked to that have shared their concerns about the current economy and the current currency and how excessive inflation is going on, and that in part of the stimulus, or I guess, or the it's part of the recovery coming up. It could be that the CDBC, I think that's what it is, the central
yeah, banking
banking
digital
currency.
currency.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, uh, gets implemented, and at that point, it would be a shoe in for larger monitoring and less privacy in financial transactions, and phasing out cash would be pretty hard. Um, One thing I noted, especially, is doing something like that would hurt the minorities a lot more than what a lot of people anticipate. My wife's Latina, and she went to Texas recently to visit her family, and her whole entire family pays stuff in cash. And in a lot of those communities, they don't really take credit cards, or they charge extra fees for using credit cards. And um, it was interesting to me when she got back and recalled her experience there, because like Utah, everybody here, it's normal for paying with credit card across the whole entire state. But in a lot of the other states, it would wreak havoc, because a lot of the US hasn't kept up with a lot of the technology, and I think Utah is one of the unique states in that regard. Um, I would say we're probably one of the more connected states on social media and the
yeah,
internet.
yeah. I could definitely agree with that. It's it's interesting. Like I was saying, the blockchain technology itself could free all of us, including the poorest in society.
Mhm.
Um, there's actually some friends of mine through Monerotopia and Monero Talk YouTube channel. They have a company called Gratuitous, and you can buy fresh coffee direct from the farmer, um, and you can send them a tip in Monero. Down in
Hmm.
that part of the world, uh, they don't have bank accounts, but
Yep.
they can have a Monero wallet, and it's fractions of a penny. Of course, I'm a little biased. However, it's the use case of what this could open up for third world countries,
Yeah.
um, even just poor neighborhoods in the United States. Um, the potential is absolutely incredible, which is why I think a lot of people are concerned about that just getting away. I mean, I don't want fiat currency, but digital. That
Yeah.
sounds terrible. I have a hard enough time with something, a fiat currency that's private like cash, let alone a digital fiat currency.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
That's just like ultimate financial slavery.
Yep. One of the other benefits of crypto um, is being able to transfer to anywhere in the world. So uh, me and my wife, we regularly send money to her parent or her mom in Guatemala, and uh, it costs quite a bit to send a transaction down there, and the transaction fees for crypto are extremely cheap. And uh, my wife, her dad also has a house in El Salvador, and so she always talks about El Salvador because they've started adopting Bitcoin a little bit more than most of the other countries, um, and she's been talking about a lot of that and how the whole country, or at least the people that she knows there, have embraced it, and they really like it, and that if she needed to send money over, she could send it through Bitcoin. And I think making it so that those national borders are, uh, I guess, eliminated in terms of being able to transfer money is something that would be really beneficial for the future, especially with everybody becoming more connected and being on the same network and being able to collaborate across countries.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. Um, one question I do have is, how do you feel about a a government, say, nothing like the federal government, but like the state of Utah, investing in cryptocurrency as like a reserve?
Um, so that's kind of hard because it's a government entity. Um, I like if it could. I know Colorado started doing some stuff with crypto, and they allow some taxes to be paid in crypto, where they have a exchange service that handles that exchange, but they don't prevent people from using it. I think something in that regard might might be good, but having the state like sit on reserves of crypto, um, I would honestly rather have the state sit on reserves of gold and silver because it shouldn't be moving that often. But that's if it were to save reserves. It really depends on what it needs and the size of the finances and stuff. But from from everything that I expect, I don't expect the state government to hold on to finances for too long. I would expect more of a balanced budget, where they have certain amount that they can spend, for the services, and then they use that. Um, Now, paying in crypto and maybe using some of that in crypto, I'd have to think about it a little bit more. But since crypto isn't quite mainstream on purchases across all industries and individuals, I would have I think the state should probably be the last one to adopt it, for at least their payments, accepting payments and taxes, uh, or accepting crypto for payments, for their taxes. I think that's something that, like, I applaud Colorado for doing that. That was something that's really cool, and I think that would be something that, I would like to see Utah get on that bandwagon. Even though taxes suck and they should be a lot lower, I think giving the options of paying for them in multiple ways that individuals have, is something that's definitely worthwhile.
I do like the idea of the government functioning on a open source, um, blockchain, only because we could turn around and
Hmm.
follow every single penny.
Yeah.
Um, how that would be implemented properly, I don't know. Um, but that full transparency. Um, so if I'm conceding to the state that it must exist, which I don't, but I will, um, then having that full transparency would go a long way.
Yeah, I
Especially
agree with that.
amongst trust, from the citizens. I would feel a lot better, because it would you couldn't change the code, or you couldn't do anything without somebody being able to find it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I do like that. However, I do agree with you that it should be the last entity to adopt it. So exactly how that would be implemented to the state, I don't know. The government should use Bitcoin where we can see everything, and citizens should use something privacy based to where the government can't see anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And states, I definitely agree in that regard because there should be absolutely nothing that they need to be secret about. States, counties, and cities, there's absolutely nothing. I would say at the federal government, most things should not be secret. There are a few things that maybe our adversaries would want to know, that maybe some of our DoD related stuff, that would be, uh, I guess, national security related stuff, at least in the current world. Like, hopefully, we can get to
Yeah.
a point where we don't have other countries that want to destroy us. But um,
Well, if we
yeah,
would just stop bombing them, I mean,
yeah, for real, for real. Like, most of the issues the United States has to deal with are our own problems.
oh, go figure. Yeah, that's wild. So we'll wrap up on this. What if you could have the perfect opportunity to get just anything done, but there's nothing holding you back, what exactly would you get done while holding office?
So if nothing was holding me back and every other state legislator agreed with me and I was able to pass stuff, I would say the first things to go would be the grocery tax. Um, Getting our liquor laws and our gambling laws uh, in agreement with neighboring states, so they're not the last in the nation for freedom. And then also uh, working towards reducing a lot of the economic manipulation the state does, and then removing all occupational licensing.
Yeah, that's fair. That's completely fair. Some of the most important things in our state right now, personally, in my opinion. Um, I had actually had a conversation with a young lady that came to our county meetup for the first time, and she was just getting her her license to be a counselor,
Mhm.
and that was actually a big issue with her. Is that due to different regulations now due to COVID, a lot of it's teleconference like we're doing now.
Hmm.
Um, However, because of licensing restrictions, she can't counsel anyone outside of state.
Hmm.
So that's a little ridiculous in my opinion. You're already on the computer. What does it matter that they're in a neighboring state or on the other side of the United States? But state says you can't, and that's kind of restrictive. That puts that takes away the market for her
Yeah.
to be able to grow her business if she chooses to go on her own or grow with a company, you know. And I have a major issue with that. So I would personally like to see a lot of that regulation lifted and loosened up. Uh, Fishing licenses, I want to see them gone. DNR can fund themselves some other way. It's ridiculous. Shouldn't need a license to fish. Are you kidding
Yeah.
me?
Yeah.
Jeez.
I agree.
That's wild. So yeah, I would like to say thanks, Jeremy, for coming on. Honestly, this is a lot of fun. I really like showcasing what we have going on here in Utah. We are a state that doesn't get paid attention too much. Um, I like that, but I do like to be able to show that, you know, we're not just a bunch of weirdos hiding out doing. I don't know what people think, but I have heard some stereotypes of Utah that always make me laugh. Apparently we climb up into the top of the temple, the Salt Lake Temple, and throw people into the Great Salt Lake.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, first of all, let me explain geography to you. um, I think it's really important because we do have a lot of really important things going on in this state, and we have a lot of really good people. And I truly believe that the Utah Libertarian Party is a great example for the rest of the party across the United States, only because whatever factions within the party doesn't really matter here.
Yep.
We all
Yeah, I
get
agree with
together
that.
and we actually just work. We just get to work. We don't worry
Yep.
about these petty squabbles, um, which allows us to do a lot more. So, thank you, Jeremy, for running, and thank you for coming on tonight. Go ahead and shout out anything you have going on, where people can find you.
Yeah, and so if you want to know more, go ahead and you can go to my website, bakerforutah.com. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter. I don't do as many posts on Twitter because Twitter's not a real place.
Same
So
with Ohio.
yeah.
Not.
But on Facebook, I'm there as well, and um, feel free to reach out if you have any questions at all. Um, I am pretty quick at responding. My email is also listed on my website, and it's bakerforutahhouse@gmail.com. Um, and uh, other than that, like, you'll see me around. If you're ever at the local autocross, I race. So you'll see me there. I'm also, I guess, on Facebook a lot in Saratoga Springs and Lehigh. So you'll see me in the Facebook groups there. So if you're in my district, you'll be able to see me and probably see some of my comments and probably see some of my arguments with some of the people that want to enforce moral laws through the state.
It's okay in your home, but not through the state.
Yep.
Well, awesome. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Anyone who is in Utah, whether you're in his district, in mine, doesn't matter, share this. We need to get this message out as far as we possibly can. Due to the subject matter that I typically cover on this show, we are always being soft censored, shadow banned, and everything. So the best thing you can do is like, share, and subscribe, and just let everyone know about these conversations. And it will help grow the movement. It will help get it out there. Make sure and stop by Jeremy's website and his Facebook. Make sure and support his campaign. And make sure to go to libertarianutah.org, where you can find all the other candidates running. We're getting close to the end of the cycle, but that's okay because we'll have another one coming up. And I'm not ready for it already. So, all right. Well, until next time, stay free, my friends. Hey, thanks, Jeremy.
Yeah.